What if I told you that over 1,400 years ago, a prophet rode a creature through the night sky that makes every sci-fi movie look basic? I'm talking about a being so powerful it literally traveled from Earth to the heavens in a single night, breaking every law of physics we know today. No rocket fuel, no spacecraft, no advanced technology, just pure divine power and a mystical creature that most people have never even heard of. Hold up, because the story I'm about to share with you is going to blow your mind, whether you're religious or not. This isn't just some fairy tale your grandma told you, this is one of the most significant events in Islamic history, and honestly, the details are absolutely insane. We're talking about a creature with the body of a horse, the face of a woman, wings like an eagle, and a tail that sparkled like peacock feathers. Yeah, you heard that right. So buckle up, because we're diving deep into the story of Buraq, the night horse that took a prophet to heaven. Okay, so let me set the scene for you guys. It's the year 621 CE in Mecca, and Prophet Muhammad is going through one of the toughest periods of his life. Like, we're talking absolute rock bottom here. He just lost his wife Khadija, who was basically his rock, his biggest supporter, the person who believed in him when literally nobody else did. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he lost his uncle Abu Talib, who'd been protecting him from all the people trying to harm him for his teachings. So imagine losing your life partner and your main protector in the same year. That's the year of sorrow, and it hit different, for real. But here's where the story takes a turn that's straight out of a fantasy novel. One night, while the prophet was resting near the Kaaba, that's the sacred cube-shaped building in Mecca that Muslims pray toward, the angel Gabriel shows up. Now, Gabriel isn't just any angel. This is the same angel who'd been bringing divine revelations to the prophet for years. But this time, Gabriel comes with something special. He brings Buraq. Now, stay with me here because Buraq's description is wild. This creature was described as being smaller than a mule but larger than a donkey, with a pure white body that literally glowed. But here's where it gets crazy. Buraq had a human face, specifically the face of a beautiful woman, with large, expressive eyes that radiated intelligence and consciousness. This wasn't just some animal, this was a sentient, divine being created specifically for this mission. The creature had wings sprouting from its sides, and its tail was adorned with feathers that shimmered with all the colors you can imagine, like the most extra peacock you've ever seen at the zoo, but times 1,000. The name Buraq actually comes from an Arabic word that means lightning or to shine, which makes total sense when you hear about its speed. According to the accounts, Buraq could place its hoof at the farthest point its eye could see. Let me put that in perspective for you. Imagine you're standing on a mountain, you look at the horizon miles and miles away, and boom, in one step you're there. That's the kind of speed we're talking about. Forget your Tesla, forget supersonic jets, Buraq was operating on a completely different level. But here's something really interesting that a lot of people don't know. When Gabriel first brought Buraq to the prophet, the creature was reportedly restless and hard to control. Some narrations say that Buraq was so honored to carry a prophet that it became overwhelmed with excitement. Gabriel had to calm it down, basically telling Buraq, "Yo, chill out. You've carried prophets before, Abraham, Moses, so you know the drill." And once Buraq heard that, it became completely still and humble, allowing the prophet Muhammad to mount it. Like, imagine a supernatural creature having an emotional moment because it's so honored to do its job. That hits different, right? So the journey begins, and this is called the Isra, which means the night journey. The prophet and Buraq take off from Mecca heading north toward Jerusalem. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's like a 760-mile journey, that would take weeks back then. But remember, we're talking about Buraq here. This journey happened in a fraction of the night. The prophet would later describe passing by caravans and landmarks, seeing things in real time that would later be verified by people who were actually traveling those routes. No cap. This is one of the reasons many Muslims point to this story as evidence of its miraculous nature, because the prophet described details he had no way of knowing. Along the way, something fascinating happens. Buraq makes stops at significant locations. One narration mentions stopping at Mount Sinai, where Moses received the 10 Commandments, and at Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. At each location, the Prophet was told to dismount and pray. These weren't random pit stops, they were deeply symbolic, connecting the Prophet Muhammad to the lineage of prophets before him, showing the continuity of the message from Abraham to Moses to Jesus to Muhammad. It's like God was saying, "You're part of this ancient legacy, and you're continuing this mission." Then they arrive in Jerusalem, at the site of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, this is where it gets even more incredible. The Prophet dismounts from Al-Buraq and ties the creature to a ring in the wall, and according to tradition, that ring is still there at the western wall, which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Inside Al-Aqsa, something extraordinary happens. All the prophets who came before Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others are there waiting. And the Prophet Muhammad leads them all in prayer. Just think about that for a second. All these legendary figures from history, all these messengers who changed the world, standing together in prayer. That's a powerful image, regardless of your beliefs. But the night isn't over yet. This is where we transition from the Isra to the Miraj, which means the ascension. From Jerusalem, the Prophet and Al-Buraq literally ascend into the heavens. We're talking about traveling through the 7 levels of heaven, meeting different prophets at each level, witnessing things that the human mind can barely comprehend. At the first heaven, he meets Adam. At the second, he meets Jesus and John the Baptist. At the third, Joseph. At the fourth, Idris. At the fifth, Aaron. At the sixth, Moses. And at the 7th heaven, he meets Abraham. Each encounter is described with such detail and reverence. Moses, for example, reportedly cried when the prophet passed by him on the way back down. When asked why, Moses said it was because this younger prophet would have more of his followers enter paradise than Moses would. Even in heaven, there's this deeply human moment of emotion and reflection. That's what makes these stories so compelling. They blend the divine with the relatable. At the highest point of this journey, the prophet reaches a place called the Lot Tree of the Utmost Boundary, which is basically the edge of what any creation can reach. Beyond that point is the presence of God himself. And here, the prophet receives direct commandments, including the instruction for Muslims to pray 5 times a day. There's actually this really interesting back and forth that's described where Moses advises the prophet to go back and ask God to reduce the number of daily prayers because Moses, from his experience with his own people, knew that 50 prayers a day, which was the original number, would be too difficult for people to maintain. After several trips back and forth, the number settles at 5. It's almost like a divine negotiation, showing mercy and understanding of human limitations. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this sounds amazing and all, but did this really happen? Like, physically happen? And that's a valid question that scholars and believers have discussed for centuries. The miraculous nature of this journey is actually part of what makes it significant in Islam. When the Prophet returned to Mecca and told people about his night journey, many people straight up didn't believe him. Some people who had recently converted to Islam even left the faith because they thought it was too far-fetched. But others, including Abu Bakr, who would become the first caliph after the Prophet's death, said, "If he said it happened, I believe him," which actually earned him the title as Siddiq, meaning the truthful one. Here's what's really fascinating from a modern perspective. The story of Al-Buraq and this night journey represents something deeper than just a miraculous event. It's about transcendence, about pushing beyond the physical limitations of our world, about connection with the divine. In a way, it's humanity's oldest dream, right? We've always wanted to reach the heavens. We built towers, we created myths about flying, we eventually invented airplanes and rockets. The desire to ascend, to go beyond, to see what's out there, that's universal. The story of Al-Buraq taps into that fundamental human longing. And let's talk about Al-Buraq itself for a moment. This creature represents something unique in religious narratives. It's not just a tool or a vehicle, it's a conscious, willing participant in this divine mission. The way Al-Buraq is described showing emotion, being honored, following commands, it suggests a level of awareness and purpose. In Islamic tradition, animals and even inanimate objects are seen as having their own form of worship and submission to God. Al-Buraq exemplifies this perfectly. It's not just carrying a passenger, it's fulfilling its divine purpose with full consciousness and honor. The imagery of Al-Buraq has inspired countless artists over the centuries. In Persian and Mughal miniature paintings, you'll find beautiful depictions of this creature, often with the Prophet's face veiled or shown as a flame out of respect, riding through starry skies with angels surrounding them. These artistic interpretations keep the story alive and allow people to visualize something that's essentially beyond human comprehension. Even today, you'll find references to Al-Buraq in Islamic art, architecture, and culture throughout the Muslim world. What's also worth noting is how this story emphasizes Jerusalem's significance. The fact that the night journey went from Mecca to Jerusalem before ascending to heaven establishes Jerusalem as the third holiest site in Islam, after Mecca and Medina. This connection has historical, religious, and political implications that are still relevant today. It links the three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, to the same sacred geography and shared prophetic tradition. For real though, whether you approach this story from a place of faith, historical interest, or just pure fascination with mythology and spiritual narratives, there's something undeniably captivating about it. The night journey and ascension represent a moment in religious history that's meant to inspire, to challenge understanding, to push believers towards something greater than the mundane world. It's a story about divine favor, about being chosen for an impossible mission, about seeing beyond the veil of physical reality. The fact that Al-Buraq has been remembered and discussed for over 14 centuries says something about the power of this narrative. In a world before instant communication, before viral stories, before the internet, this account spread across continents and cultures, being retold in Arabic, Persian, Turkish, Urdu, and countless other languages. It's been the subject of poetry, art, scholarly debate, and personal devotion. That's the mark of a truly significant story. It transcends its original context and continues to resonate across time and cultures. So what's the takeaway here? Why does this story matter to you, whether you're Muslim or not, whether you're religious or completely secular? I think it's because the story of Al-Buraq and the night journey represents something we all seek: transcendence, meaning, connection to something greater than ourselves. It reminds us that throughout human history, people have believed in the extraordinary, in the miraculous, in the possibility that our mundane reality isn't all there is. In our modern world of smartphones and scientific explanations for everything, there's something refreshing about a story that says, yeah, the impossible happened, and it was glorious. If this story fascinated you as much as it did me, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because we've got so many more incredible stories from religious history and spiritual traditions around the world that you've probably never heard before. Drop a comment down below telling me what aspect of this story surprised you the most, or if you want to hear about other miraculous events from Islamic tradition or other faiths. We could talk about the splitting of the Red Sea, the staff of Moses turning into a serpent, or even dive into other mystical creatures from different religious texts. Trust me, there's a whole universe of these stories out there, and they're all absolutely fascinating. And hey, next time you look up at the night sky, maybe you'll think about Al-Buraq, that magnificent creature blazing through the darkness with a prophet on its back, traveling from earth to the heavens and back in a single night. Whether you believe it literally happened or see it as spiritual allegory, it's a reminder that humanity has always looked up and wondered what lies beyond. That sense of wonder, that desire to transcend, that's what makes us human. Alright you guys, that's all for today. Thanks for riding along on this journey with me. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep your mind open to the extraordinary. Peace out.